Welcome to the Numbers Don't Tell Stories show. Each week, we like to give our listeners ideas on how to evaluate numbers through story. Our desire is to entertain you and provide you with useful insight. Welcome back to episode 14 of Numbers Don't Tell Stories. I'm Tom Etchison, and Matthew Dix is with us here. And this episode is kind of a very interesting, something totally different. I ran across an X post that caught my attention. I didn't even know this was a possibility, so I'll describe it a little bit to our audience, and then we'll kick some numbers around. This X post notes that a record 31.7 million was bet on table tennis with a Colorado sportsbook in January. It's the second straight month of record table tennis betting in Colorado. And so in this Colorado sports betting proceeds, this book, there's a bunch of crazy numbers of things you would expect, basketball, NCAA stuff, pro football, and tennis, NCAA football, all the normal stuff. And then table tennis sticks out as a crazy large number in this chart. And so I thought I'd throw out a few numbers here to kind of set the stage. So 2020 marked the first year of legal sports betting as it began in Colorado. And so in 2020, we were at the height of the pandemic, or the start of the pandemic. And so there was, as this came out, as we were coming out of the pandemic, the Russian and Ukrainian tennis leagues were continuing to play during the pandemic. And so that was the very few things that were available to bet on all around the world. Games were being played every 15 minutes, so there were tons of opportunities to bet on this stuff. And so the massively interesting thing here is that table tennis is the fourth most popular sport for betting purposes behind the NFL, NBA, and NCAA, which is just astounding. And it surpasses golf. And this is what really astounded me, MMA and boxing. And so these numbers, like 31.7 million on table tennis, is just a hard number to put into context, Matthew.
Well, I have two thoughts. I don't know much about table tennis. I've seen it played a little bit. I think one of two things is happening here, or maybe a combination of the two. Number one is I think the frequency of the games really helps a lot and is a sad indication of the frequency in which people who are betting like this want to bet. Right. Golf only happens once a weekend. Right. So you can put a lot of money down on a golf tournament, but you have to wait for the tournament to come. And I think this is probably an indication that people who are into gambling, addicted to gambling, use it as a primary source of entertainment, they're not interested in waiting for the next NFL game or even the next NBA game. You get 3 games a week, whereas if it's every 15 minutes on table tennis, and that is the thing that gives you a dopamine hit, that probably makes sense. My second thought is, and this is probably less likely, but perhaps there's a level of predictability on table tennis. They've sort of figured something out where when they bet on that game, they feel like it's less governed by referees and by weather. In golf, for example, weather can really mess everything up. A great player on a windy day is suddenly not a great player. And a football team changes based upon whether it's snowing, raining, or a beautiful day. Whereas table tennis being played inside, like everything is sort of even. So maybe people feel a little more equipped to be betting on that sport. But I suspect, unfortunately, it's the former, and it's the desire to bet as often as possible, as frequently as possible. And that 15-minute game probably is really appealing to a lot of people who kind of don't care about what they're betting on as long as they're betting on something.
Yeah, I think that was the most astounding piece of the research that I did, was finding out that during the pandemic, especially, you could find another game every 15 minutes. And I think that that addictive behavior requires that next hit as quickly as possible, and that's what table tennis provided. And I it made me think a little bit about table tennis in and of itself, because I was thinking, well, the only real interaction I've had with table tennis seems like the from the Olympics. And it made me think that, okay, well, when did that become an Olympic sport? And it was 1988, so it's been around. But the popularity of it, basically has just kind of started to take off from the standpoint of all the betting surrounding it and so on. And Colorado happens to be one of the few sports books that breaks down all of the betting data. And so it's hard to know if this is across all the places where there's legalized gambling, is there that much interest in the table tennis? But I'm guessing it is. And then it made me think to myself, okay, well, what might be the next industry? Is this like the leading indicator of what's coming next, to bet on, like, when you think about it? And the one sport on here that I didn't see that I was wondering if it's going to come next is pickleball, because that has become the craze. And there are all these leagues popping up everywhere. It's similar to table tennis. It's indoor. You don't have a lot of the weather aspects. You could have that stuff going all the time.
Right. My curiosity lies in the idea of, so table tennis is a game that can be played every 15 minutes or so. So you can bet constantly. Is
Right.
there another sport like that? And is it also seeing the same sort of growth? I've been racking my brain to think, is there like racquetball maybe? But I don't know. Do we bet on racquetball?
I
You
don't know.
know,
Yeah, that didn't come up. And yeah, I'm trying to think what are some of the other things that are played globally, that might be, so the idea that if you can get something every 15 minutes, and it could be any country in the world, and you don't have to know the language, you just have to understand the sport to bet on it. Or maybe you don't
right.
even have to understand the sport.
Right. And you may not want to. If you have a problem betting it, maybe it's not that important to you.
Yeah.
Uh, if we were entrepreneurial
Yeah.
I don't know, looking to make money on the suffering of others, perhaps, what we'd be looking for is another sport that can be played with great frequency indoors,
Right.
so we don't have to worry about weather, and it's
Right.
easy to gamble on. Probably without much of a referee, I would think.
Right.
Something that's pretty obvious: who won, who lost, 15 minutes, and we attach gambling to it, and we're probably going to make a fortune.
Right. Well, and that's where my mind started to go, thinking about pickleball being currently it's valued at about a $1.5 billion industry right now, growing to about a 4.4 billion dollar valuation by somewhere around 2033 or in that area. And so you think, okay, well, I don't know how long those events last, but you're right. That's where your mind starts to go. This is the leading indicator of a great betting sport, not just a sport. And are they easily rigged, so to speak, for the gamblers? I mean, it's like, is table tennis, played legitimately? I have no idea. I mean, so all these things start to run through your head as you think about where's the next one of these going to come from.
Right. And maybe the tragedy here is that the sport is actually irrelevant. We could actually create a very boring sport that's easily bet on,
Right.
and that's essentially all that people need in order to be successful.
Right. That's the winning formula.
Right. Not to disparage table tennis, because perhaps
Right.
table tennis is a greatly exciting sport for a lot of people. But, if you and I can just invent some silly little sport that can make us a fortune because it's easily played indoors, without any obvious way of corrupting it, that would be pretty
Right.
great.
Yeah. And that's I've detected a common theme out of a couple of different podcasts we've done here lately. We should have these follow-ups where maybe we come up with the game that might be from an entrepreneurial perspective,
Right.
start to run the numbers of what could be next on these lists for the future.
Yes, I agree. I love that idea. I love the idea of hunting for the next sport that we can use to take advantage of problematic gamblers who are ready to hand over their money
Yeah.
in exchange for a chance to, get a dopamine hit from a bet.
Yeah, and you think about things like darts or axe throwing. I mean, those games are fairly fast
Yeah.
and could be played everywhere, but those don't show up on here. So it's interesting that table tennis has picked up. And so yeah, we need to do some deeper dive on, what are quick games that are played globally that people could get their pick of 24/7, because I mean really I think that's what sports books are looking for, is they want people betting around the clock if they can.
Yeah. Something like cornhole, right?
There you
Or
go.
pool. Yeah, things like that it would be really interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I'll also admit to something. I With your incredibly storied life, I just assumed at some point in your life you either were a professional table tennis player or were adjacent to professional table tennis players. So we don't ever discuss these or do deep dive before we just throw them up and look at them. And so I just assumed that you would have that portion of your life.
I was not. I would say, I'll tell you, I was at least a semi-professional poker player for a long time,
There you go.
and making a decent living doing that on the side until what they call Black Sunday took it out online and made it more difficult to play. So that game, for example, although we're not betting on poker games,
Right.
that is a game where you get to play it quite frequently. A hand comes every 2 minutes.
Right.
So, like table tennis, that's why that game has popularity, similar to all of those card games that draw people into casinos. But no, I've seen table tennis played, but I've never played it myself.
Yeah. Well, I think also the other follow up with this is, does this trend continue now for a long period of time post COVID,
Right.
or does this get replaced by something else? Because I feel like NBA, NFL, NCAA, those things are always going to be kind of stalwarts for the betting. But what will be these other kind of secondary and tertiary ones that are battling for that next slot?
Yeah, and the ones that are played more frequently than any of those games to allow
The
people who are
betting.
doing this on a regular basis, sort of like day trading in stocks,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, same kind of a dopamine hit if you can do it
Yep.
quite often.
Yep. Great episode. Thanks for playing along, and we'll see you on the next one. You've reached the end of the show. We ask that if you found this useful, that you please tell a friend. Leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you're watching us via YouTube, please like and subscribe.